Alright, first of all, I am a Celtics fan. This year was actually the time I started loving the NBA and started being a fan of the Celtics. So this video is not about hate, but recently, while researching on the NBA for other videos and viewing this team and this season in other light, it got me thinking. Is it possible that the 2008 Boston Celtics championship team is a bad team? But that is impossible, so I checked if it is worse than remembered, hence the overrated, and it was just a fluke that they won that year. At this point you must be thinking I am crazy. Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen all relatively at their prime, hungry for a ring, all on the same court. This couldn't be a bad team in a million years. Plus, you have a solid Kendrick Perkins at his peak and Rajon Rondo at an all-star level. So, are you high? Well, I am not. These are some of the reasons that the team was good, but here are some things you might not remember from that season. 1. The bums. The Celtics roster that year was not great if you exclude the starting five. I'll start from the bottom. It had an irregular number of bums. Gabe Pruitt was lucky to be drafted in 2007 by the Celtics because he won a ring, but he barely contributed to the team and only played in 15 games. Scott Pollard, on the opposite end, was already 32 this season, which would also be his last. He quit at his prime for sure, but not prime in terms of ability. Prime is winning a championship. He only played in 22 games and also barely did anything on the team. The next guy, may the internet forgive me, is the undisputed GOAT, the white mamba, Bryant Scalabrine. But I have to get serious for a second again, forgive me. The only reason he played 48 games and started in 9 is because Paul Pierce is the only small forward on that team. Seriously, look it up. The Mamba had to play small forward instead of his usual power forward to compensate for the lack of small forwards on the team. He scored 1.8 points per game in 10.7 minutes per game. Basketball Reference said so. Sorry, GOAT. The next two, while I do not consider bums, were fossils by the season. Both were signed mid-season and played 17 and 18 games respectively. These were Sam Cassell and P.J. Brown, and while Cassell did contribute surprisingly well for a 38-year-old, Brown really didn't do way too much and is heroically remembered for a certain action which I will touch upon later. So we have 3 bums, 2 artifacts, and now we move on to the more impacting bench. So, since this is the part that I talk about why this team might be overrated, I'm only going to talk about the less impacting bench players in this section and will leave the impactful for later. So the backup point guard for the Celtics is Eddie House. Just your very average bench point guard, and statistically speaking, this season was average for him, like really average. His career stats and this season stats are nearly identical, and they are not outstanding. At small forward, as I mentioned earlier, there is no one, which is very weird for a team this successful to only have one player natural at a certain position. So who do they play? James Posey for most of the time, sometimes Leon Powe. I have no problem with Posey, who is a good and proven player, but do you even remember Leon Powe? If you don't worry about it. He only lasted 5 years in the league and didn't leave a mark. The only players I didn't cover yet are Tony Allen and Glen Big Baby Davis. Davis as a rookie did his part, and Allen also played a signature great defense. Now, there is an argument for the bench for not contributing statistically in this year's Golden State Warriors, with 13 players on the roster averaging less than 7.6 points per game, while the 3 big stars, Durant, Curry, and Thompson, average 72.7 points per game. Any fourth guy, Draymond Green, gets about 10 points per game. In Boston, it's a similar situation. The big 3 averaged 55.8 points per game, Rondo added about 10 points per game, and the rest of the stat sheet is very similar to the Warriors one. So is it comparable? Absolutely not. While the Celtics have average player averaging average stats, the Warriors have great players playing smaller roles. Players like Andre Iguodala, Matt Barnes, Sean Livingston, Zaza Pachulia, JaVale McGee, and David West. So to summarize the lineup, we have 3.5 All-Stars and prime Kendrick Perkins to complete the starting 5. But then you only have James Posey, Tony Allen, and Big Baby on the bench, because seriously, who heard of Eddie House and Leon Powe? Plus 2 38-year-olds and 3 bench warmers. Any way you look at it now, this lineup with 8 legitimate players does not seem ideal. And the last reason why this team may not be as great as remembered is the playoffs. What happened to them in the playoffs? Well, before defeating a fantastic Lakers team 4-2 with some very memorable moments, the clunky road to there is much forgotten. Did you remember it took 7 games for the Celtics to defeat Atlanta? This Atlanta team was not great, thanks for asking. They only won 37 games in the regular season. But every time the teams played at Atlanta in the playoffs, the Greens lost. Every time the game was in Boston, it was a Boston win. So, thanks to home court advantage, they advanced. Next were the Cleveland Cavaliers. And again, it took 7 games to top them. These Cavs are far from today's though. During those days, there were no Kyrie and Kevin Love, only LeBron and Delonte West, Drew Gooden. Any way you look at it, this was a team LeBron carried all by himself. And he was the only matchup that was actually favorable for Cleveland. And again, each team won at their respective home. It took a lot of effort and a hero performance from a 30-year-old P.J. Brown for the Celtics to be able to advance. Now, these are the 3 main reasons why I believe the 2008 Celtics might be an overrated team. The team just didn't look deep for starters, with many bums and even more unrecognizable faces. And the playoff ride seemed too hard for a team that was supposed to be much better. Now, I still believe I am right about the bumps part. 3 is way too much on a championship team, but I was happy to learn through my research what made the 2008 Celtics team work. So first of all, obviously the trio. Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett were some of the best players and scorers in their position at that time. They combined for 55.8 points per game out of the 100.5 points the team averaged. They were all around the age of 31, the age where usually players start to decline, and they were hungry for a ring before that happens. Now the second reason, and really the final reason why this team worked so well, it's his style of play. Offensively, as you could have already noticed through the small comparison to the 2016-2017 Golden State Warriors, the Celtics were not outstanding. Their 100.5 points per game was only 11th in the league. What made them stand out was their defense. The Celtics only let their opponents score 90.3 points per game in the season, second in the league. They were second best in rebounds that their opponent got, third best in turning over their opponent's ball, and fifth best in steals. And their entire team personality was built on defense. KG won Defensive Player of the Year that season. Kendrick Perkins is a very effective player on D, contrary to his offense. Rajon Rondo is a fantastic defender and one of the best in stealing in the NBA. 2-time All-Defensive First Team, 2-time All-Defensive Second Team, 1-time steal leader. And here comes the bench's time of redemption. Tony Allen is a player known for his defensive tenacity, and that is mainly thanks to this season. Plus, he is a 3 times All-Defensive First Team, 2 times All-Defensive Second Team. Glen Davis, Eddie House, Leon Powe, P.J. Brown, James Posey, they all played the roles, mainly defensive, while on the offense, Rondo passing to the big 3 seemed to work just fine. So back to the main question of the video. Is the 2007-2008 Boston Celtics overrated? No, they are not. This is a team built on a very defensive mentality, which happened to have a lot of very fitting role players on it that complemented its 3.5 superstars perfectly. And they also had 3 bunks. That point is still valid. Anyways, these are my conclusions through the research that I made. If you have a different opinion, you are welcome to express it in the comment section and start a civilized discussion. So thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to watch more videos of this kind. Thanks again for watching, and see you on my next video.